Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. Let's talk money.
And welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. Tonight, we are talking about how your emotional habits affect your finances. Joining us for tonight's episode is Joan Sotkin of prosperityplace.com. Welcome to our show, Joan.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. And of course, we have the members of the Money Mastermind Show. We have Kyle Prevost of youngandthrifty.ca, Miranda Marquette of Planting Money Seeds, Peter Anderson of Bible Money Matters, and Tom Drake of the Canadian Finance blog of Tom Couldn't Make It Tonight. I'm Glenn Craig of Free From Broke and your moderator tonight. Before we start, if you're watching live, I want to direct you to our events page. There is a questions app there. And if you have any questions about your emotional habits, about your emotions and your money habits, that's about that, then feel free to ask them on that events page, and we will try to get to your questions. We like to take questions from our viewers. So, back to our topic. Finances. Now, finances, that's just numbers, right? So, how is it that our emotions get involved in numbers?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, actually I left it a little rhetorical sounding, but there's a question somewhere.
It's kind of hanging out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the question really is, how do our emotions affect our life? Because people tend to separate their money from who they are. I mean, your money is an extension of you. It's how you're expressing yourself. I describe money as a symbol of relationships, because money by itself has no power. It just kind of sits there, and it doesn't have any energy until it passes between two people or entities. So it's actually a symbol of relationship. So how you deal with money is how you deal with your relationship with yourself and others. So when you've got money issues, it's actually never about money. It's about relationships. And it's a whole different way of looking at your money. And so, and if you want to know how it affects it, I like to look at how our emotions create our life stories. In other words, I had 2 millionaire brothers and I couldn't rub 2 pennies together, and I wanted to know why. Why I'm just as bright as they are, if not brighter, and why were they able to do what they're doing and I couldn't. And I gave all my things away. I went wandering and meditated to 8 hours a day for a couple of years and was looking for answers that I couldn't find in books and from adults who never made any sense to me. And so I came to believe, and I think I've proven it true, that you have thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and then the emotions are what inform your behaviors. So the emotions are actually the bridge between your internal and external world. And so when you can understand your emotions, you can understand why you're behaving the way you do. Does that make sense?
It sounded a little heady there, I think, for the average person. But it did make sense. I'm not trying to knock that out, but it does make sense. But, you know, our emotions are, for lack of a better term, so emotional. How do we get a grasp on that? If that's what we need to understand in order to better understand our relationship with money, how do we get a grip on our emotions?
By feeling them.
Oh, damn it! Now you're making me angry.
Good.
Well, I think though you made a good point when you talked about your money being an extension of yourself. I think one of the things that we've talked about in the past is being able to look at yourself and know yourself and understand yourself so that you know your priorities and how you want to spend your money to keep you in line with your values. And I think that really kind of goes into that. Getting to know your emotions and understanding yourself and the why you do things can help you move into that more positive relationship with money. So I think that makes a lot of sense to be able to understand what's going on inside of your mind can also help you figure out how to better direct your financial resources.
And the thing is, a lot of people want more money, but they don't necessarily know how to manage money. I had this business in the 1980s. It was a crystal business. I was selling crystals and minerals for healing and meditation nationwide. I had a line of stones called Joan stones that were in 600 stores. I was making a lot of money. And I wound up going bankrupt because I was bringing in today's money, $50,000 a month, and had no idea how to make financial decisions. I had a bookkeeper 3 days a week who did everything I told him to do, so we just bought a lot of crystals. And people have this idea that it's you don't have to take care of money. It's amazing how many business people don't take care of their money. You have to keep track of it. There's a show on CNBC with Marcus Lemonis called The Prophet, and he rescues businesses. And he says over and over and over again, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And people say, well, I'm not very good with numbers. Well, the fact is you don't have to be. You just have to be able to enter data. And the software does all the counting for you. And so there are two parts to it. There's the you part, what you're bringing to your money, and there's the external part, which is the actual money. And money goes to people who love and take care of it, just like people. And the thing that money likes best is to be counted.
So, I mean, with your particular situation, with your company, I mean, it almost sounded there that like you made it sound maybe like a bookkeeping issue or something. I'm not really quite getting where it was that your emotions are maybe what prevented you from being more prosperous with it.
Okay, and I don't use the word prevent, okay? I'm interested in how we create our life stories. Why does one person wind up on the street and another person winds up in a mansion? What makes that happen? Are we the victim of life circumstances? I don't believe that. I believe that we're co-creators and that actually we're all connected and we're co-creators with whatever that force is, and we can make choices, we can look at what we're creating and change it. So I believe, and it is deep. You say it's deep as if, well, don't get deep on me. You know, where people are deep. You know, I mean, we're not just these little balls of nothing rolling around. There's a lot more to us than that. So, and I think it starts when we're little tiny babies. Okay, and the mother, you know, if there's any kind of abuse or neglect, let's say a kid is born and the mother doesn't really want it and doesn't look in the kid's eyes and doesn't bond with the child. Well, the natural response to that is to feel alienated and alone. Can you see that? Or is that too deep?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I kind of...
Some people, sorry, Miranda, their issues with money might be something that really goes back a long ways. I mean, not saying...
To the beginning.
To the very, very beginning, and how their relationships were formed with the people that are close to them. And
how their response to the world around them developed.
So is there no hope for them then, Joan? If I wasn't loved by my mom and eye contact wasn't made, is that it? Is that the ball game now? I'm going to be in debt the rest of my life?
You could be, but you can also say, how can I get out? And once you understand where the emotional habits started, you are not your emotions. They're just habits. And you can say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. So the trick is to recognize. Second step is to release, and the third step is to replace. So if you recognize that you really do feel alone, and you're not afraid to say that to yourself and to feel the aloneness. I mean, part of expressing emotions is feeling them. You don't have to have a vocabulary. You don't have to say, I feel so alone. But if you feel this emptiness, everybody's got something a little different, the way they feel it. So you just have to feel the feeling, and then you say, what am I feeling? When did I feel it before? And because the feelings you're having now, everyone has emotions. We're run by our emotions. Our emotions are like the notes we play in our instrument, which is our body. And you have a kinesthetic experience in your body when you're having an emotion. You can be, when you're scared, when you're any kind of emotion, it's not happening in your head. It's happening because these neuropeptides are attaching themselves to receptors in your cells. And so you're feeling it in your gut, right? My gut tells me, I feel it in my gut. My heart hurts. I have tension in my shoulders. Are you relating to what I'm saying?
I do hear what you're saying, and it sounds like you're saying that your finances, it's not just some subject that's outside of yourself. There's a holistic approach to your personal finances. I mean, and I think we've talked about this on this show before, that your money is not some other. It's really everything that you're doing around you is going to affect your money. But to go back to what you were saying and how those first formidable moments are going to affect you. Maybe on the flip side, I hug and kiss my kids. I tell them I love them, and I've been holding them close. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to be millionaires.
No, that's a choice. In other words, people focus, from my point of view, too much on money and not on what they want their lives to feel like. Most people that I talk to are not satisfied with what they have. They're always longing for more. Oh, if only I had more money. If only I had a bigger house. If only I had a better car. There's that longing and dissatisfaction. And if that's your habit, no matter what you have, you're still going to be longing and dissatisfied because that's your emotional habit. My goal is to help people feel comfortable with who they are and what they're doing with their lives, because then the money is not that difficult because you're in a place of ease. And it's amazing. I'm sure you've all had experiences where you say something and somehow the answer just shows up. Well, what if your whole life was just showing up and it was all positive? Can you imagine that?
So Joan, if I believe in my heart that I'm a Porsche driving, limousine riding, jet setting millionaire, I believe that in my heart that I am that, but I make a teacher's salary. How am I supposed to reconcile those two things? Because I'm at peace that I am this sort of celebrity in training or whatever you want to call it, but my paycheck is still just, the basic math isn't going to add up for me there.
If you want to be a celebrity jet setter, there's something you've got to do to make that happen. Money doesn't fly in the window. You have to create the container for it to fly into. So it's like for a couple of years, I wasn't doing a whole lot. I had a concussion and I was dizzy for a year and a half, and my income showed it because I wasn't putting the energy in, energy out. I wasn't putting the energy in to making it happen. Now, some people just seem to have more of a talent for making money, but if you have that basic talent, which is what you're describing, and you choose to be a teacher, you're saying, I'm choosing not to make more than a teacher makes. That's your choice. But if you want to make the celebrity, I worked in Hollywood for a long time, so I was around a lot of celebrity, and believe me, it doesn't make them any happier than you or I. Okay, and my brother was a big-time Hollywood producer. I've been around that world, and there's nothing magical about it. To me, my goals are not necessarily financial. I have feeling goals. I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel satisfied. I want to feel confident. I want to enjoy my life. And the money doesn't do that. The money is just something that you get to use. But it's not who you are. Your money is not who you are. It's just the energy that you use to interact with the world.
And I can see that. That's something that I talked about to a certain degree. Is money the end itself, or is it your means to an end? And I think it really does matter if you're going to say, well, it goes back to getting to know yourself and saying, well, what do I really want out of life? I think if you keep looking for these external things looking for something to come along and make you happy rather than looking for what what you actually want to do and trying to find contentment. I think that's where you start to run into problems, like what Kyle was talking about a little bit. No, he's not going to be driving a Porsche on his well, you could be driving a Porsche on your teacher's salary. You'll just be in debt. So
it could be a used Porsche.
That's right. It could be a used Porsche. It could be 20 years old. But, it gets right down to it is, what makes your life worth living? And I think you have to answer that question for yourself before you start deciding what you want to do with your money and directing your financial resources.
And whatever it is, the money is as you said, is not what's going to make you happy. If you're not happy without money, you're not going to be happy with money because happiness is not your habit. Here we go back to emotional habits. When I was homeless, I actually see it as my spiritual journey. I gave everything I owned away and I went wandering. And as I look at it, it's like it was an amazing time in my life. I learned that I could trust the world around me, that whatever I need really did show up. I had no money, no place to stay, and yet I did it for quite an extended time, and it was amazing what happened. So I learned to trust that I can never run out of resources, that whatever I need will be there. It got a little woo-woo at times, but it wasn't woo-woo to me at the time. It was happening. And I've been around a lot longer than all of you. I'm in my 70s, okay? So I've had twice as much time to screw it up and fix it again, okay? And believe me, you'll screw it up and you'll fix it again. and it's the screwing it up that teaches you what you've got to teach, what you've got to learn to become who you're becoming. When you're only in your 30s, you don't know what it's like to be any older than that. And so your whole world is only that old. But when you get to my age, you can look back at things and just see them from a very different point of view. Now, it's partial, when I was younger and I was working in Hollywood and I was making all that money and I was spending all that money, no one taught me about financial management or being an adult with my money. I came from a debting family, and my father's philosophy was if you had the money, you go buy a toy. And so I had a lot of good toys. But somehow you learn that you can have all the toys in the world, and it doesn't make your life rich. The question is, what do you need to do to make your life rich? To me, someone asked Warren Buffett how he measures wealth. He was on a show on TV with Bill Gates, and he said, I measure it by how much love a person has in their life. He said, I know a lot of wealthy people who I don't consider rich because they don't have that connection to other people.
Now, I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying, but certainly like a Warren Buffett or a Bill Gates or anybody of that wealthy status, they're coming from a place where they can kind of afford to say that. They could stop buying stuff for a long time and they'll be taken care of from now to the end of time. What about the person who is a single parent and, is struggling to make bills, to make rent, to make mortgage, running around all day? How do you get a grip on your emotions so that you can make the right money decisions?
That's a complicated question. But first of all, if they're eating a lot of junk, then they're not thinking right. I mean, there's a whole, to me, it's a very holistic thing, okay? Because you've got to fuel your body, fuel your mind. People who, and this is going to seem a little Pollyannish, worrying is the worst thing you can do. The first teacher I had said to me, worrying is a waste of time. And I thought to myself, what a concept. Because when you're worrying, you're in that adrenal state and you can't get those messages. Everybody gets intuitive messages, but if you're in a state of contraction and always worried, then you're trying to figure things out rather than taking a couple of minutes and sitting and breathing and letting ideas come to you. We're not teaching people how to think right. So there, we have this society that's saying you've got to have more, you've got to have more. What you need is a place to stay and food to eat.
So it sounds like we tend to get a little stuck in that fight or flight mode.
Absolutely.
And I've heard a lot about this, and I tend to agree with it, that we tend as a society to get too stuck in that, and
I think there's a good reason for that, though, because quite honestly, until your basic needs are met, you're not going to be able to move forward. Honestly, your survival needs have to be met before you can move forward with just about anything. I can
right,
see
but there's
why you kind of get stuck there a little bit.
I think there's true fight or flight mode, where it's real survival. You got a saber-toothed tiger on your back, and if you don't, do a burst of running right now, you're going to get mauled. And then there's the 9 to 5 grind of just pressures of your boss and your family and everything else, and the bills that still puts you in that same physiological state.
Oh yeah,
as that saber-toothed
sure.
tiger. But then we take it home. We don't have that mile run to get away from it, so that we expel that energy, so to speak. So we just carry that baggage with us for a long time. I mean, right. Is that kind of like what you're getting to, Joan?
Well, yes, absolutely. And when I was wandering, when I had no money and I never knew where my food was coming from, if I had no money for food, I figured I was learning how to fast. In other words, I learned an attitude of acceptance, and parents get so wound up. I mean, we see these helicopter parents and parents who want the best for their children, and they're driving everyone nuts, and they're not relaxing into life, which has so much richness beyond this frenetic accomplishment. What have you accomplished, and how much production, and what are your SMART goals, and I mean, push. And I don't see that makes a great life. You might make a lot of money, but you also might get a heart attack and cancer. And I mean, the body cannot function forever under high stress. Stress, more than anything else, is what causes physical disease. So to me, part of the secret of making more money is learning to let go and relax, and letting your life go in a direction that's natural for you, not someone else. And we're not taught how to find our own way of expression. But
it almost sounds a little bit like you take whatever the situation is going around you, and you need to reframe it.
Absolutely. It all depends on how you look at it. After my first acid trip, that was what I came down with.
Thank you for bringing that, being the first person on the show to mention that.
Yes. No, but I think
I don't think it's been talked about enough in personal finance in general.
That's right.
But please continue with your story, because now I'm really intrigued.
I spent a lot of time in the 60s, and we were looking for answers, and when I came to understand it all depends on how you look at it.
Oh man, I have to digress here for a sec. The world just lost Leonard Nimoy, and I just can't help but think of that whole thing in Star Trek 4 where he's like, "Oh yeah, just too much LDS."
LSD.
Well, I think he said it wrong.
LSD. Well, he said a little too much LDS, but he meant LSD, which of course thrilled the crap out of me and my siblings, because that's how we grew up. So.
I mean.
I think we.
I mean, everybody these days is looking for a way to get high. And I don't think we can push that aside. I remember one time when I was on my journey, I had enough money to get to Sacramento. I had no idea what I was supposed to do in Sacramento. And I was sitting in the airplane, and I was feeling really high because I felt like I was being guided and everything was really cool. And I was sitting in the airport, and this college kid came up to me and said, "Are you on acid?" And I said, To tell you the truth, I found
Not
something
today.
that not today, but it works better. And because you don't have to, you don't get all the physicals and everything else. What I learned to do was to do a lot of meditating, and meditating gets you high. It also gets you free of worry, and you can approach your life from an entirely different point of view.
So would you say that that's kind of maybe the tool or the approach that a lot of people might need to sort of get away from how crazy their emotions are getting? That
Meditation.
That I've heard the term headspace, or something along those lines, just to give yourself some distance so that you could make
Yes.
the right decisions.
I think a meditation habit doesn't cost a single penny and is probably the most valuable thing you can invest your time in. Even
I
if
like
it's
index funds.
I'm with you there, Kyle. Index funds all the way.
Well, I think what Joan's trying to get to, though, is that you get yourself to a point in your emotional state where all right, index funds are where I need to put the money, and not, whatever Uncle Joe who just showed up for
Exactly.
today told me to put it in the latest tech stock.
Exactly. Some of my friends who are very successful investors, they make their living investing, and they're highly intuitive people. They go walking. I met most of them at the dog park. We have this incredible dog park in Santa Fe, which mile-long trails, and you get to see a view of the whole city. And they get out there every single day to clear their mind and be in some place other than push, push, push. And to me, that is what's going to save the world, is when we all learn to relax and enjoy ourselves a little bit and stop trying to make so much money. And the money comes when you allow it to come.
So you're saying that maybe, besides just the relaxing and having fun, that maybe we need to be a little more dispassionate when we're making big decisions, especially when it involves money.
Detachment. Absolutely. Detachment is a skill, so that you're not making your decisions based on fear or greed, which is what runs the stock market. And it's amazing what makes stocks go up and down, aside from the computer trading now, which really drives things nuts. But why are you doing it? Are you doing it just to make money? Just to be able to say, I've got more money than anyone else in the cemetery? There's so much more than that. And as Miranda said, you really have to look at your values. What do I want from life? I don't have smart goals. I have feeling goals. And I think one of my greatest accomplishments is that I honestly have an unusual amount of peace of mind and satisfaction. And, nothing's wrong in my life. And how many people do you know they can say, my biggest problem is I have no problems?
It's a rare thing to hear from people. Usually if you ask somebody how they are, you really don't want the answer.
That's right. And ask me how I am having such a good time. And my business is expanding, not because I'm after the money, but because I just want to share what I've learned along the way. And it gives me so much inner satisfaction. The money is like a side effect.
It's interesting how you brought meditation into it. I've been listening to the Tim Ferriss experience, I think that's what he calls it. And, he's always talking to high achieving businessmen and sports people and all sorts of different people. And a common thread among a lot of the people he speaks to is that they have some sort of meditative practice.
They meditate, they have a mentor and a coach. Those are the three things that the thread goes through every interview that John Lee Dumas does. All these interviews with all these business people. It happens on my podcast when I'm interviewing people, and because that meditation gets you in touch with you. Every one of us is so unique, and we spend so much of our time trying to be like other people, and so you're really depriving the world of your gifts because you're trying to do your life like someone else does their life.
So what is your practice like?
in the morning, I do my morning routine with the shower, and then I meditate for 10 to 20 minutes every morning. Sometimes I just get the urge to meditate at night for whatever time. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll meditate for a while. I'm very stress resistant. I had at one point absolutely exhausted my adrenal glands. You don't ever want to do that. I could not get from my bedroom to my living room. So I focus on adrenal glands. And the minute I feel myself getting the least bit overwhelmed or stressed out, because there's a feeling, I mean, when you're having an adrenal response, I take many deep breaths and I sit and meditate, because I'm the only one that can regulate that for myself.
You talk about meditation and thinking about your emotions and looking at your what's important to you. I think that's really one of the important things when it comes to your emotions and your finances, is realizing that we are emotional creatures, that we are affected by our making, and that you do need to be in touch with those emotions and realize when they're happening. Maggie Baker, a PhD and author of Crazy About Money, How Emotions Confuse Our Money Choices, did some research that found that negative emotions exist with an intensity that's 2.5 times as strong as positive emotions, because they're signaling a disturbance that you should be tending to. And a lot of times what we do is we kind of just ignore those negative, and we just allow them to trigger negative behaviors in our lives, whether it's overspending when we're eating out with friends, or just buying things to improve our mood or cope with stress or deal with loneliness, whatever the case may be.
And you
so
just
I think it is to be in touch with that.
You just said your emotions are informing your behavior. So when you can be in touch, and you don't have to have an emotional vocabulary. One of the things I do with people to help them understand their money feelings, what are the feelings they're expressing through their money, is you look at your bank balance and close your eyes, or you get a bill in the mail. Very few people get a bill and go, or we don't get it in the mail anymore, we get it in email, and a bill comes and you don't go, oh wow, a bill, when do I get to pay this? There's a contraction that happens. When you look at your bank balance, also often people say, gee, I don't have enough. I really should be making more. How am I ever going to make it? Shame, shame, shame. That has nothing to do with the money. Those are your feelings. And so if you allow yourself to just sit there and feel the feeling, it doesn't have to have a name. It just where in my physical body am I having this kinetic experience with this emotion? And right now I'm going through a whole process where I'm seeing this very subtle contraction that I get with certain people. And I don't even have a name for what I'm feeling. I'm just feeling it and realizing that it's not something I want to continue feeling. Can you see how you can deal with it that way? And then you can say...
So what you're saying is, I mean, we're all going to have emotions.
Yes.
You're not saying that we have to be like Spock, just to throw another reference in it anymore, where we don't feel at all. But we just have to recognize that these emotions come and go. And that if we could see that, then we could let that pass and then find ourselves in a better spot, and then we can make better decisions.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's like watching a baby, and they're crying 1 minute and laughing the next second. I mean, they're in and out. Aha, ooh, and that's letting it flow. Yeah. So
I mean, it does sound like meditation is a great factor and a great tool in of itself that'll help people maybe recognize their emotions and their thoughts as they're coming by. Do you know of any good tools to maybe get people started on that road? Because I think to a lot of people, meditation still has this weird sort of hippie 60s feeling, and it shouldn't, but I think it still kind of comes across as that to a lot of people. So
they've been doing it for thousands of years. Okay.
Sure. But that's not necessarily the impression that people are getting in general.
Okay. So the easiest thing is to go to prosperityplace.com, go into the free section, and download the instructions for meditation. That's the cheapest way. One of my clients is now using something called HoloSync, which is, you put the earphones and you do a whole thing, but you got to buy the program. The whole point is to just sit still. I was talking to a woman the other day, and she said, I've tried to meditate, but I just can't quiet my mind. And I said, that's because you're trying to quiet your mind. It's not about trying to accomplish something. Okay? So what you do is you sit there and you close your eyes, and you watch your mind as if you're watching a river go by. You don't say, I shouldn't be thinking this, I can't quiet my mind. You just watch it. And you do that for 6 weeks, and you're going to be in a very different place. That's the whole deal. If you want, good. I mean, it's really easy. If you want to use a mantra, I've used a number of those. You can use make up words. You can use I am the power, I am the light, whatever. I kind of wait to see what comes, and then I use that particular phrase that day. The one I used to use in the beginning was I am peace, and I would imagine a peaceful lake in morning, or I am love, and I would think about anything that I loved. It's just the idea of trying to focus. You can even start by just doing some candle gazing, where you light a candle and you watch the flame. That's it. That's the whole deal. The idea is not to try to accomplish something. Oh, I've got to be the best meditator in the world. I better keep my mind free of any thought for at least 10 minutes or I'm not meditating. That's not how it works.
It's certainly an easy enough practice that anybody can get into without having to go somewhere or read up on 100 texts.
Right.
Or do anything really especially fancy. You just need to have a few minutes to yourself. And it doesn't even have to be in a fancy scented room or anything like that. You could just kind of close your eyes for a couple of minutes while on your bus ride. And,
that's it.
and just get to thinking about non-thinking or non-thinking about thinking or just watching your thoughts go by.
That's it. That's the whole deal. And there's no right or wrong. There's no better or worse. It's just sitting still. Most people can't sit still.
There you go, Zen Master Glenn.
Well, he still is the most Zen person that I know. I never see him out of countenance.
I think we've talked a lot about how emotions do kind of get the better of you, and it seems like, and I can't disagree that meditative practice can help you get a grasp on what's around you, at least on your own thoughts, and it does help you to not just kind of automatically shoot from the hip all the time, because that's not always helpful. It sounds like it's a really good place to start if you want to get a grasp on your emotions and then be able to make good financial decisions. So let's start to wind down here, and we'll do a final word on our emotional state and our finances. And we'll start with Peter. What's your final word?
Sure. Okay. Well, my final word is just to realize that we are emotional creatures, that you're always going to be dealing with your emotions when it comes to your finances, because, again, they are connected. So just be aware that that's going to be happening. And when you realize that you're feeling emotion, maybe you're got a nice brand new house, just stop and think about what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. And then maybe try to work towards some productive behaviors that can move you in a good direction, instead of just going out and overspending or whatever. Instead of going and spending a bunch of money to buy your own nice new house, think about some things you're grateful for, and maybe write down a journal of things you're grateful for. So do productive behaviors instead of destructive emotional behaviors.
Great thoughts, Peter. How about you, Miranda? What's your final word?
Well, the ancient Greeks said, know thyself, and I think that's your first step, is to understand yourself, understand your motivations, understand why you're spending money, and that goes back to your emotions. And also, it goes back to looking back into some of the habits you've developed over time and understanding just where you're coming from. I think once you understand yourself and what really motivates you, then you can start working toward more positive interactions with your money and with everything around you, and then managing those emotions better.
And Kyle, what is your final word?
I'm a bit of a more concrete guy, I guess, so some of this stuff is a little over my head maybe. So I'd recommend a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It's a little bit of a different take on sort of emotions and that lizard brain that you were talking about, Glenn, where you're running away from the saber-toothed tiger and how that affects investing decisions today. Anyone takes a look at that, it gives you a pretty good idea why human beings are not very good at picking stocks by and large. So that is sort of my contribution to emotions and your money.
That is a good book. I haven't been able to get through it yet, but I do plan on finishing it, and what I've read was pretty awesome. Joan, what is your final word on emotional habits and your finances?
Okay, my bottom line is love yourself. Treat yourself like someone you love, and breathe deeply at least 10 times a day, and sit quietly with yourself. You'll find out you're really a whole lot nicer than you thought you were. And just enjoy who you are and understand that wherever you are at this moment, it's helping you become who you're becoming. You're not at the end of anything. You're in the middle of a story. Make it an interesting story.
Thanks a lot, Joan. And for anybody out there in the audience that may not be familiar with your work, can you enlighten them about what you do online and where they can find more of your work?
Okay, go to prosperityplace.com, where there's lots of free information, and my book, Build Your Money Muscles, 9 simple exercises for improving your relationship with money. I have a podcast, The Prosperity Show, which is now twice a week. And I do interviews, and some shows I just sit and talk for 15, 20 minutes because I got a lot to say. And as of tomorrow morning, we are opening a launch on a product called the Freedom from Financial Struggle Program, which is designed to help people get together and work together and learn how to manage their money and how to deal with their emotions. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a ongoing thing, and it's very affordable. And it comes with a prosperity blueprint mind map. So if your listeners will go to prosperityplace.com/mind map, they should go to go to freedomfromstruggle.com. And that's where you'll find it. And then you can get into the launch, and you'll see I did a bunch of videos where I actually do show up on camera. And there's a couple of videos and information. The first 2 videos are about dealing with your emotions and dealing with your money. And then I describe the whole program. So if they go to prosperityplace.com, or if they go to freedomfromstruggle.com, they'll get there.
freedomfromstruggle.com. So make sure you go check that out. Thank you again for joining us, Joan. You've been very entertaining tonight. The first person on our show to mention acid.
We'll take it.
Thank you, everybody out there, for watching. And until next week, be good with your money.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Mastermind Show. Get more information at moneymastermindshow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Google+.